Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the United District podcast. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by Simon Peach, Chief Football Writer for PA Media, who was at the game between United and West Ham tonight at the time of recording. Simon, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. It's great to have you on. Quite a lot of stuff to tackle. I'm sure you've been a busy man as of recent, and obviously I believe you're still at Old Trafford now. I think I'm right in saying you've just seen United play against West Ham, and lots to tackle, as I say. It's been an interesting one. What were your general thoughts on United's performance, first of all? Because as a United fan, I think we're all a little bit disappointed, perhaps a little bit unmotivated and a little bit sloppy. Would you agree with that?
It wasn't a thriller-minute ride, was it?
No.
It was pretty drab, if I'm honest. We were saying that in the press box, and then I had to remind someone that we've got the only other game that's going to be left here is Lask at home, which is going to be, I'm sure, an even more depressing occasion. But no, I feel that United have just tired off a little bit. I think that's basically what it's down to. I think Ollie was, and I've spoken to other managers in the division, and it tends to be the ones that are doing well have stuck with the same side where they can. But with United fighting on so many different fronts, I do think they perhaps overdid it with those 5 league games in a row when they stuck with the same lineup. I thought that would hurt them against Southampton, and it did. And I feel like they could have perhaps changed it a little bit earlier tonight. I think they all looked tired. Bruno Fernandes probably had his most underwhelming game, which is annoying for me having captained him in my fantasy team. So that's I'm sure I'm not alone. But no, we spoke to Ollie afterwards, and he made the point. I asked him the first question of the press conference and just on his thoughts, and he made the point that it basically gives them the same starting point as a 1-0 win or a 2-0 win would have, in terms of United just need a positive result. If they won 4 or 5-0, then I think it was over. But they didn't. So there's a feeling of disappointment and what could have been, but realistically, it hasn't really changed what's going to happen on Sunday or what is needed.
Yeah. What did you think about his rotation against Chelsea? I know a lot of people have been critical of the team he selected there, and obviously we changed things, we brought players on, and sort of, players ended up who were meant to be getting rested ended up playing about the same amount they would have if they would have started, and obviously that's now hindered us with the league as well. Lots of sort of, flack being thrown at him for that. Do you agree that perhaps the Chelsea selection was wrong and that other things should have been prioritised? Do you think that semi-final could have been prioritised more?
It's easy to be wise after the point, but my initial reaction when I saw the starting lineup, actually I saw a colleague of mine do it, and I genuinely thought he might have been sold a pup, but it was an old team sheet that he'd been sent a photo of, because I thought that just looks like a starting lineup from the start of the season. Obviously with Bruno, and it couldn't have been, but my first reaction was that's going back to what hadn't really worked. And I know it was a very similar lineup to what had beat Chelsea in the Cup, I think it was, but I don't know. I think he made a mistake not starting Romero, not because of the errors he's made, but you've got probably the best backup goalkeeper in the world, and you need to keep him happy. And from what I can tell, I don't think he's over the moon with that decision. Especially when you look at Wood Caballero and the other goal. So I think that was an error. Obviously, David made some bad mistakes that game. And then, the other selections were a little bit... I think it's underlined perhaps the lack of strength and depth, or perhaps just how rusty the players are that haven't got those minutes, because a lot of them haven't played properly for 4 or 5 months now.
Yeah. Going back to tonight, there was quite a lot of...
Do we have to?
Yeah. Going back tonight against West Ham, there's a lot of controversy surrounding... Well, I say it's controversy. I've got to say I think it was a penalty, the Pogba handball. I've seen some people arguing that it's a natural human response. Do you have any thoughts either way on whether that should have been a penalty or not?
It is a natural human response, but it's also handball.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that people need to remember. I thought it was a little bit over the top, Gary Neville calling it embarrassing, and that's rubbish. But I mean, as you said, if someone's whacking a ball at you that speed, your brain doesn't have time to react and think, hold on, where's my feet? Am I inside the box? Oh, I shouldn't do this. So yeah, it would. Mason got him out of jail though, didn't he? Really, at the end of the day, he's come up trumps in so many of these games now. He's so fun to watch. As an England fan and someone who hopes Manchester United do well because I spend so much time watching the club. So it's just that feeling, isn't it, tonight, that it's what could have been, but realistically they're in as good a position as you could have. Well, you would have snapped their hands off a few months ago, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
if you were given this.
Yeah, for sure. I think the only argument, as you say, if we won by a few more, by a few more, we didn't even win the game, did we? By a few goals,
Yeah.
as you say, that's when things would have changed. I think that's when we'd have put ourselves in a much better position. But obviously, we haven't done that. The Southampton. I know you're a Southampton fan. I know that.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's why Leicester's goal difference is so good as well. So double bubble.
Yeah, there you go.
But I mean, look, we're recording this during the second half of the Liverpool-Chelsea game. Unless there's something miraculous happens, United are going to go into the final weekend of the season in third. That's brilliant. This hasn't been a superb season by any stretch of the imagination. Across the Premier League, given the points tallies and where United could end with, realistically, with 64 points, they could finish third. But considering where they were, I think it's really impressive, and that shouldn't be forgotten.
Obviously, we've been on a very good run of form as well, pre-lockdown, and then obviously since the restart, we'd started extremely well. We've only recently sort of dropped off. What do you think of the sort of recent drop-off? Do you think it's as simple as being burnt out, and is that an acceptable excuse from a Manchester United side, do you think?
I think it is acceptable, yeah. Ollie's and his coaching staff will focus a lot on getting the players fit this season because of the demands that are on them in the style that he wants to play. But when you have that lag in time to prepare and stay on top of your fitness for game levels, it is natural. As we were saying earlier, I think he stuck with that lineup too long, really, and I think that has bit them on the backside. But realistically, it's cost them a place in the cup final, but it shouldn't cost them a top four place, which I think the money men would be happy with at the club.
Do you think that's a bit of a problem, the sort of the attitude now? I know a lot of people have an opinion one way or another. The value of, I've been talking on previous podcasts as well about this, the value of the FA Cup and the League Cup compared to top four. Do you think? Do you have any stance on the sort of the lowering of the sort of value of those?
I think it's really sad. I think it's natural. I think it's natural for every club. I remember, as we discussed just a second ago, I'm a Southampton fan, and we were in the cup final. The cup semi-final against Chelsea a few years ago. But even though we had that, our main focus was on beating the drop. That was, as a supporter and as players, that was the main focus. It was just a nice aside. I don't think it was quite a nice aside at United to reach a semi-final because it's a club synonymous with silverware and winning. But at the same time, I think if you can reach a final of the Europa League or go all the way on that and get top four, then I think it's been a really good season. And the near misses in the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, will kind of be forgotten.
Moving on to a sort of more general question, because to be honest, there wasn't much that went on, as we've already alluded to, in that United-West Ham game, really, to talk about. What do you think of United's season as a whole? It's been a mixed one, as we've already sort of spoken about, to say the least. And I'm aware, with one game left to play, it is quite hard to judge. But what do you think of Solskjaer's first sort of full season as permanent manager?
Well, it feels like it's been going on forever, because it has, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I think the one question I had about Solskjaer after when he was given the full-time job is how he would react to a setback or a string of bad results, because he didn't have that during the interim run. And when it did, things started to go awry. That's when he got that permanent contract. Obviously, last season ended, and I was worried when United kind of stuttered. Basically, they beat Chelsea, and then they played well in one half against Wolves, and then we didn't really see a good performance from them again until about October.
Yeah.
So I was concerned, and obviously with Mauricio Pochettino in the background, it raised the pressure, and it has been topsy-turvy. There have been awkward moments, but I think it would be wise. Let's assume United will get the Champions League, because they should do in this point now. The way he's brought on the young talent. I mean, Brandon Williams wasn't this time last year. I was with United on their tour of Asia and Australia, Brandon Williams wasn't even in that squad.
Mm.
And look how he's come on, how he's been brought on. Mason Greenwood, I think he's been absolutely superb with him. When we were with him in Singapore last year, he was asked whether he would go on loan, and the answer was definitely not. It's going to be like how Sir Alex brought through Ryan Giggs, which was interesting at the time, and I think it has been a bit like that. He's kind of kept him away from the media, put him in at the right times. I think the Europa League has been beneficial to give him that chance to get used to regular men's football. I think that's a real positive. I do think there's more positives than negatives. Bruno Fernandes has been a joy to behold, apart from tonight, it's got off his head. But look, it's been far from perfect. You're way off Liverpool and City still, but you're going in the right direction. And this is shaping up to be a pretty decent transitional season.
No, it's good to hear you think so from a sort of from a different sort of perspective outside of our sort of bubble, because I know our fans can. Both extremes, to be honest, can get a bit carried away and can also be a bit pejorative when.
It's the same with the media though. We're guilty of it as well. 1 second you're the best thing in the world, and the next thing you're not. So it isn't as easy or as straightforward as that. I think it is hard to keep perspective in an era of social media and everything, where there's a hot take on everything. If you look at it over the broad, I try and keep a broad view of it, and it's easier said than done because I don't always do that with Southampton. But when I am as a neutral, I try and look at the whole, and you're starting to make good signings again. You look like you have a structure and a plan. It's not going to. Rome wasn't built in a day, obviously. That saying is overused, but with United, they've not had I know you finished second under Jose, but you've not had a sustained proper Premier League title bid since Sir Alex Ferguson retired. So you were having to build and go up and up and up. So I think you're well placed. I think you've got some work to do still, but I mean it's something to be positive about.
Just quickly, I wanted to ask you about David Moyes' comments before the game. He, slight little jabs at the Manchester United board, perhaps, for not giving him much time. What do you think about those comments? I'm sure you know the ones I'm referring to. What do you think about those comments? Do you think he had a point? Because to be fair, I think personally, I think he had a point. To be fair,
he did have a point, but at the same time, he can't. He took over a side that had just won the league. So it's not like he came in where Ollie came in and they'd stayed about that level. He'd taken over a side. Admittedly, there was some transition needed there, but they had just won the league and he couldn't qualify for the Champions League. Perhaps he could have been given more time, and the way the club's built is in the last 30 years is about giving people time and trusting them, and it does feel like they're doing that with Solskjaer. But he didn't produce the results. This is also a results club. So, yeah, it's a hard one to tell. From people that I've spoken to that worked around the club in that era, there's not many people that miss him, so maybe that's part of it as well.
Yeah, fair enough. Going back onto, I know I'm jumping around a bit here, but going back onto a player we're just speaking about, Mason Greenwood, shocked everyone with his sort of quality, as you say, a player that you enjoy watching, and I'm sure all United fans do as well. Both-footed, looking just like a great, really pretty well polished for his age as well, talent. Do you think he's in, as an England fan, do you think he's got to be at the back of Gareth Southgate's mind, isn't he, alongside sort of Phil Foden as well?
Yeah, so I've got one of these weird jobs where I also cover England. So and I used to cover the under-21s with Southgate was there. So I've got I'd like to think a fairly good understanding of what he wants and his philosophy and his way. The only way I can't see Mason being called up for the September fixtures, yes, ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be fixtures in September at the Nations League, is because of the Europa League and whether they're going to take a longer term view and giving players time off, Manchester United players and Wolves players. Not that there isn't any Wolves players, are there? I'm getting muddled. But yeah, in terms of Manchester United players, they would probably get extra time off, and Man City, because there's just not going to be any rest time otherwise with the Premier League restarting mid-September. But he will be in his thoughts, 100%. I think I've heard him name dropping before when talking about stuff. He has he has pressed the reset button at every opportunity in terms of refreshing and putting in young blood, even if it is a bit of a eye-catching decision. I mean, Kyle Walker being just gone straight out. I mean,
Yeah.
Wan-Bissaka's got to be close to getting in. I know he was in the first squad after moving to United and had to pull out. I think it was with a back injury. So Southgate will be keeping a keen eye on everything. He was at Wembley the other day for the semi-final, but I don't think he'll be reading much into one performance. He's a special talent. I mean, I enjoy watching the UEFA Youth League when I go around covering United, and Mason Greenwood at that level. There was only one other player that made me go, bloody hell, this kid, and that was Joao Felix. So I look quite smart now, because obviously he went on for some ridiculous money about a year and a half later. But the same with Mason. Mason's the only other player that I've gone, wow, this kid is something special. But that's one thing being like that at that level, and quite another to be able to take that step up. And I think he's been brilliant.
Another question for you here. I know this is a bit of a broad and a bit of a general one. A question that's been asked for, well, how long is it now? 7 years since Fergie left, really. What is it?
When are you going to sign a right-sided player?
Well, that was after this one, actually. I was going to ask you that in a minute. But okay. First of all, what do you think United need for a title challenge? Where do the problems lie? Do you think it's the squad? Do you think is Solskjaer the right man? I know that's a tough question as well. But where do you think we need to improve?
Wow. So I think Solskjaer is the right man at the moment. I think if he was to go, Mauricio Pochettino would also do a very, very good job. Somebody that I covered during my time covering Tottenham and Southampton. He is another one that has a lot of focus on youth, and he's obviously on the market. So I'd like to see him here one day. But for right now, I think Solskjaer is the right guy. In terms of the squad, you've got an interesting decision to make at goalkeeper. Obviously, Dean Henderson's been fantastic, but it is another thing stepping up and playing for from Sheffield United to Manchester United. Look how Ben Foster struggled when he came here. It is a big jump. I think Luke Shaw's been appreciated more now he's been out of the last few games for what he does. I think he gets unnecessary flack, and I'm not really sure why.
Yeah.
I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I think you've got good right and left back starters. I think you need more pace at centre back. Lindelof goes hot and cold. I think he's cold at the moment. I mean, he got pretty lucky in the first half today. I think it was Antonio who came in charging behind him, and De Gea, and the header went straight to De Gea. But I was thinking, where's your alertness? I think Maguire's going to be good, but will improve in his second season. Your midfield, considering in December people were saying you've got no midfield options. Now you seem to have quite a few. So I think that's quite good in the centre of the park. I've said ever since I covered the club, my first game was Marcus Rashford's debut against Midtjylland, so it's quite easy to remember.
Yeah.
But I've always wondered why you don't have why you've not signed a right-sided attacker like an elite right-sided attacker. I think Mason's filling in well there. I know it's kind of a mishmash of the forward line just completely moves around. But I think that is an area that has been a priority, in my opinion, since I've covered the club. But what do I know? I think centre forward, obviously Marcus can play there, but I would like to see another centre forward there. I know Odion is there, but he is very much a backup. You would rarely start him unless it's a cup game. So an elite centre forward, an elite right-sided attacker, and an elite centre back. But that's easier said than done in this market because it is an absolute cluster. Yeah.
No. Moving on to the transfer window, I don't want to get bogged down in names. I think we've had so many podcasts where we've talked about various players. I think all the listeners know who we're linked with and what might be happening, and it's tough to predict that. But there's been a lot of talk about the sort of financial situation. Obviously, we don't know if we've got top four yet, which is obviously a big sort of effector of that. How do you see the window playing out for United with regards to sort of how much money will be spent and how many sort of players will be signed?
I think. Well, I know the Champions League will have a big impact on that figure. There isn't going to be. I can't give you a war chest figure. I like the phrase war chest, but I can't give you a number to go with it because, quite frankly, I'm not sure the club knows exactly where they are on that sense. I think also what is not really been focused on, but is it worth bearing in mind is Boris Johnson announced that in October fans can start making us, in theory, a phased return to stadiums. But what the details of that aren't clear to the clubs yet. So is that whether if it's 2 meter social distancing within grounds, 1 meter plus or 1 meter, that affects a lot of the finance of the money that comes in and what you can achieve within a stadium. So there's that side of it. There's these kind of unclear aspects that will need sorting out. I think with United, in terms of obviously Jadon Sancho is a player that's of interest. I don't know if anyone's noticed that, but
who?
Yeah, but it's going to be a case of money because Borussia Dortmund can say what they want, but they have to be realistic in this market, and it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. I imagine it's going to that story is going to run a bit more between the end of the season once United know where they're at and the Europa League starting. Because I heard a report today. I don't know. I think it might have been Rafa Honigstein on a podcast saying that Dortmund will want to get it sorted by August the 10th, which is when their pre-season kind of gets underway. So that would make sense, and that is a period of time in which I think United should try and strike if they're going to get that deal done. But it's easier said than done. If Dortmund are saying this 120 million euro that I've seen quoted in other places, then I just don't see how Man United can afford that. Or anyone, realistically, in this market, because coronavirus has had such a crushing impact on clubs' finances.
Moving away for United, before we go off, I'd just like to ask quickly, you've already spoke that you're a Southampton fan. Have you been satisfied with your season and the performances under Ralph Hasenhüttl?
Well, maybe not the whole season. There was a few dark moments, as you may be aware. Look, as a Southampton fan, you know you're going to lose your best players. There's always a bigger fish.
Yeah.
But the trade-off is that you get to enjoy your football when you go, and that's been far too scarce since Ronald Koeman left. And Adkins, Pochettino, Koeman, and then it just got. I know Saints got to the EFL Cup final and were robbed by Man United under Claude Puel, but it wasn't entertaining. I mean, and a lot of people said, "Oh, you're spoiled, this and that." Well, look what happened at Leicester. Exactly the same. It's just not. It's not what the fans kind of wanted to buy into. Whereas Ralph Hasenhüttl is what I think of as a personality manager in a kind of Klopp mold, where people warm to him. But also that he has a philosophy that people buy into, and he has that 9-0 has actually proved a blessing in disguise, really, because having spoken to the chief executive and people around the club, that was the moment they went, right, this transitional period we're not going to try and phase it now, we're just going to do it. So a lot of players just went, right, you're not for me, you're not going to fit my system, you're not buying into my philosophy, blah blah blah, go. And look at the benefits. Saints are now going to finish 11th or 12th by the looks of things, considering they were on 8 points after that 9-0 loss to Leicester, I think it was, at the end of October. It's pretty damn impressive. So, yeah, I'm hopeful of a positive season next season, but I think some smart business will have to be done at the back to do that.
Yeah. A season of two halves for both United and Southampton, really, I think it's fair to say. Simon, it's been a pleasure. I'll let you get off because obviously it's been a busy day for you. I'm not sure if you had any last words for the listeners.
No, just good luck this weekend.
Thanks. We'll
as much as I enjoyed Kazakhstan, I don't really want to go back anytime soon. So I'm hoping United do it. I'll be out in Cologne, and it's just a shame that the fans won't be because... yeah, they get everywhere.
Simon, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
No worries. Take care.